Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Michaela. So for today's video, I'm gonna talk about the 5 books that I read last month. Let's just jump right into this video. Let me just be honest, 2022 is not really starting out that great. There's like a lot of 3s in here, like 2s, things that I'm just like, dang. I just was waiting to read some of these books and some of them are just like not hitting right now. So anyway, let's just get started. So the first book of 2022, I actually did give 4 stars to. It was 84 Charing Cross Road and I gave it 4 stars. And basically this is like a little nonfiction book. It's kind of like a memoir. It's told in letter exchanges between a writer in New York City and a used book dealer in London. And it was cute. It was just a sweet little like palette cleanser, I guess I should say. Like if you're looking for a book to read in between other books, I think this is the one because it was super quick, super easy to read, and I think it also has a movie. If I'm being honest, you probably can watch the movie and read the book in the same amount of time. Like that's how short it is. It's a super quick read. So I believe it takes place in the 1970s, and basically this writer in New York, she's looking for like these old classic books that she can't really find here in the States. So she ends up writing to this bookstore over in London and is basically like, hey, do you have these classics? I'm looking for these kind of books. And it just basically starts off this little relationship between them. They're sending her books, she's just, you know, sending the payment over, and then it gets like to where they're sending each other Christmas gifts, and it was with just like one person, like the one main guy or whatever, but then she ends up developing a relationship with like all of the other people that work in the bookstore. It was just really sweet, and you know, it's just like a little friendship that they have, but it was cute. It was a cute book, and like I said, it was super quick. That's probably another reason why I gave it 4 stars, because I was able to like read it in like a day or 2 and move on to the next book, I guess. But yeah, it was very lighthearted. If you're looking for something quick, easy, lighthearted, something to fill your to be read list, because like if you have a goal that you want to get to, this is the one, because it was quick. So for those of you that may have seen my 2022 bullet journal setup, if not, I will be sure to link it here and down below. But I have a book page where I keep track of all the books that I read this year, and I also have a book bingo page that like helps me read like random books. I just kind of pick a square and find a book that fits with that square. So for this one, I could have filled out a few different squares. I have like nonfiction, I have a book under 250 pages, and I ended up picking the book that has a number in its title because it is called 84 Charing Cross Road. So I was able to color in that square for this book. So the next book that I read was Gods of Jade and Shadow. And the quick little brief description says, the Mayan god of death sends a young woman on a harrowing, life-changing journey in this one-of-a-kind fairy tale inspired by Mexican folklore. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars. If I'm being honest, I was super excited to read this book because I love like Greek mythology. I love learning about other cultures, and I know nothing about Mexican folklore or Mayan folklore. Like I know nothing about that. So I was like, okay, this is something that sounds like I'm gonna be super, super interested in. And it kind of just didn't, I don't know, it kind of just missed its mark, I guess, for me. So a little bit about this story. It takes place in the 1920s, 1930s era, and it follows this girl named Cassiopeia. And she comes from like a wealthy-ish family on her mom's side. So when her dad passes away, her and her mom go to live with the grandfather. The grandfather lives in this big house with all the other like aunts and uncles and cousins, and they all basically treat them like the servants, essentially. So when she's cleaning her grandfather's room one day, she opens this chest and accidentally lets out the Mayan god of death, who has been locked in there for years and years and years. And he basically asks for her help in basically trying to reclaim his powers so he can challenge his evil brother who locked him in the chest to basically take over the underworld. So he can challenge him and reclaim his throne as the true leader of Xibalba, which is the underworld. And I mean, it was a cute little story. If you're familiar with like Greek mythology, it was giving big Hades and Persephone vibes at first, but don't expect that. And that's all I'll say about that. That's all I'll say about that. So I did give this one 3 stars, and for my book bingo page, I colored in the square for a book with a color in the title. Wait, jade is a color. Like jade counts as a color, right? Yeah, jade counts as a color. Yeah, we'll just do that. We'll do that. It's fine, it's a color. Moving on. So the next book that I read was called A Song Below Water, and I gave it 3 stars. I really wanted to like this book, but there was just things about it, and maybe my expectations going into it were incorrect. I don't know, but I'm gonna give a super brief description on what this book was about, and then I'm gonna talk about like why I didn't necessarily like it. So this book follows 2 Black girls, Tavia and Effie, and Tavia is actually a siren, and this whole thing takes place in like present day Northwest America. And so being a siren in this society is like frowned upon because people are like afraid of sirens because they control people, that kind of thing. And in this society, sirens are mostly, if not exclusively, Black women. So she basically has to like hide her identity and her magical powers of who she is. So she's just trying to live her like high school life while still trying to figure out her powers that kind of randomly come overnight kind of thing, and she doesn't really have anybody to teach her or show her how to be a siren. I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but something happens in the media that shed light on this girl who was murdered, who may or may not have been a siren, and it starts protests and things like that across the country about sirens and all this kind of stuff. So the issue that I had with this book, and honestly, somebody on Goodreads had a really, I think she summed it up perfectly in her review. Basically, it's not about Black girls who are sirens, it's about being Black while being a siren. And it sheds light on like things that are just happening in today's society and like living and growing up in America while being Black. However, it's like, let's sprinkle mythology in there, and I just don't understand like why. Like if you're gonna write a book like that, just write the book like that. I guess I went into it thinking that it was going to be super fantasy heavy, like a fantasy book about Black people. Like you don't really see that, you know, super often, so I was like really excited. But it's just the fantasy is just like sprinkled in there. The world building wasn't that great, I didn't think. The reason why I gave it 3 stars versus the 2 stars I was gonna give it was because like the beginning of the end was like, I was enthralled and I was like, okay, the story's like moving a bit, you know. I really wanted to see like what was gonna happen with that whole part. And so I don't know, this one just wasn't it. And some of the things just like didn't really make sense to me. For example, they have sirens and they have alokos and sprites and gargoyles live in this society, and it's like alokos, sprites, gargoyles, they can kind of live and be free amongst the humans and it's fine. But then like something in there was, and maybe it was supposed to be a joke, I don't know, but it was kind of like, oh, you know, like I know vampires aren't real, like vampires don't exist. And it's like, but why? I don't know. It just was like, why do some of these mythological creatures exist, but like werewolves and vampires are just not real? Like, I don't know. It was just, for some reason, that part stuck out to me in the book. And I just was like, no. It was basically like magical realism, but heavy on the realism. Apparently there's a second book, I think, that's either out or supposed to come out. I might read that one. I don't know. It didn't hit its mark for me, but the cover art was beautiful, and that's honestly like one thing that drew me to the book, because I was like, ooh, I thought it was gonna be about mermaids. I thought it was gonna be about mermaids. I was like, ooh, this is gonna be good, like Black mermaids, nice. But yeah, it was just an okay book for me. So for the book bingo page for The Song Below Water, I ended up coloring the square for Read a Book by a Black author. The 4th book that I read last month was called Behind Closed Doors, and I gave it 3 stars. And honestly, as I said in the beginning of this video, these books were just not hitting for me. And They were all pretty forgettable. It's a psychological thriller kind of book. So a little bit about this book. It follows Jack and Grace, who are like this perfect couple on the outside. He's an attorney who has never lost a case, and she is like a little housemaker who has a beautiful home, beautiful garden, cooks, cleans, does this little does like amazing dinner parties, that kind of thing. But like, you know, everything looks perfect on the outside, and one of her friends starts to notice a few things, like, you know, Grace doesn't have her own cell phone, she doesn't have her own email address, she can't really ever go anywhere without Jack, they're inseparable. But she starts to kind of like see like something's not right. Like, why is it that if I reach out to Grace, I have to email you, or I have to call your phone, Jack? It's a little, you know, it's a little something going on there. Grace also has a disabled little sister who I believe is like 17, like going on 18, and she currently lives at like a boarding school. And then once she's 18, obviously she has to like leave the school, and so she's gonna come live with Grace and Jack. So like they're, you know, setting up her room in the house and things like that. And the story is told from present day and then like the past as well, to like see how they met each other and how they kind of got to the part where they are now. And that's pretty much the book. It is a thriller. I read a lot of books like this, and so a lot of the times they're like super predictable to me. And this book kind of had some things where I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Like, nice little twist here and there. Again, after I reevaluated, I was like, this book was forgettable. And now that I'm thinking about it, some of the things were kind of predictable towards the end. I don't want to talk too much about this book without like ruining it or spoiling it. So I think that's all I'm going to say. I will be sure to link all of the Goodreads like little descriptions down in the description box so you guys can check them out if you want to, but I don't want to say anymore because I'm gonna ruin it. Okay, moving on, next book. Okay, so for the last book that I read last month, I actually used my book bingo page to find this book, and I picked the square that says judge a book by its cover, and I chose The Lost Apothecary, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. Look at this book, you guys. This cover page is just gorgeous. I don't know, I just love this cover page. It was beautiful. I went into this book literally knowing nothing about the book, and I actually really enjoyed that, like that experience. And I think that I will actually do this again quite often. I'll probably do this a few more times because it was just interesting to find something that I'm like, I don't know nothing about it. It could be a hit, it could be a miss. And this one was okay. I know I talked about the other books that I gave 3 stars, kind of like I gave this one 3 star. I think because I had like way higher hopes for them. This one, I had nothing to go off of. So it was like a pleasant 3 star, a pleasantly surprising 3 star. So this book is told in a few different perspectives. It's told from Caroline's perspective, who is in present day London. She's currently on vacation in London. And it's also told from Nella's perspective. Nella lived in the 1790s, and she is the owner of the apothecary. She inherited the apothecary from her mom, who ran an upstanding business. She gave herbs and medicines and spices and things like that to women. It was mostly women that they, I guess, like that they dealt with. But once Nella took over the shop, she did also do that. But then she also started selling poisons to women to basically poison the men that wronged them in their lives, their husbands, brothers, cousins, dads, whatever. If a man wronged them, they were able to go to Nella's shop and get a poison for them to poison them and kill them or whatever. It also follows a 12-year-old girl named Eliza who goes to Nella's shop for her mistress, and she ends up kind of like staying around Nella's shop, being her assistant a little bit, that kind of thing, learning the different mixtures for the poisons and the medicines and things like that. And I thought the story was just kind of sweet. It's spanned over centuries because Caroline in present day London finds a little vial from Nella's apothecary shop, and she's like an aspiring historian. So she's trying to figure out how long ago this bottle, you know, was around and who owned the bottle. She just wants to know things like that, and it kind of just ties their stories together. And again, I thought it was an interesting story. I like I said, I was pleasantly surprised because I was like, I went into it blind, and I think I need to go into these like more books like that, because this was one that I actually was like, this is not a bad book. I couldn't give it 4 stars because it wasn't anything that was like, oh my god, this is life-changing. I mean, it definitely wasn't a 5-star book, but a 3, it was a high 3 for me. So take the 3 with like high praises. I think this one was pretty good. So those were the 5 books that I read last month. I will be sure to make a video of all the books that I'm reading this month as well. Let me know what books you guys are reading. I love adding things to my to be read list. So even though it's kind of long, I'm making my way through it. I'm trying not to add too many things, but let me know if you have any recommendations of any books that you read recently. I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.